Hey, everybody, welcome to Love and Reload, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and I am blessed and honored. Today, we have a first. We have our good friend, Elena Anderson, here. She's no stranger to the program. Hey, Elena, how's it
Hey,
going?
Ben. Well,
And we have a big blessing here because we're also joined by her mother, Edmonia Anderson. Hi, Edmonia, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm fantastic. It's so wonderful to have you with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a blessing. This is so fantastic. I think this is the first mother-daughter combo that we've had in our almost 2 and change years of doing Love and Reload. So I'm super excited about it. If you're joining us right now, get in the comments. I want to know who you are, where you are, what you're up to right now. Give your company a shout out. Give mom a shout out. Your mom, her mom, every mom's. We just celebrating Mom's Day. Throw it in the comments. Hit that heart button too. Send a little love out there. Elena, where in the world are you today?
I am downtown DC.
Oh, nice, nice, nice. And Edmonia, where are you today, ma'am?
Birmingham, Alabama.
Birmingham, Alabama. All right.
hmm
This is fantastic. Get in the comments. I want to know what you guys are thinking out there. We're going to be talking about inclusion in the workplace. We're going to be talking about best practices. We're going to be hearing a little bit of kind of a historical perspective as well from Edmonia, who's going to share her story with us. So I'm very excited about that. We got people checking in right now. Larry Graham checking in.
Oh,
Oh,
Do we
Larry.
know Larry?
I
yes, we do.
do.
You do? Who's Larry, Edmonia?
He's a deacon of my church. Very wonderful young man.
Yeah. Well, I'll take your word for it, Larry. You're welcome here anytime. Let's see here. My grandfather was a deacon actually in Dallas, Texas at Buckner Terrace Baptist Church. Shout out to those folks. Fantastic. Keep the comments coming. We got a bunch here on LinkedIn. Keep those coming. I'm not seeing them all come up, so I'm going to give you guys shout outs here as they're coming in. We got Gwendolyn May.
Oh, all right.
Look at this. This is fantastic. Francine, OMG, Elena, so excited to have you
Oh,
here. And your
Clubhouse
mom's
crew.
sending you
Uh,
all the love today. Thank you, Ben, for bringing these amazing ladies together today. Yeah, super cool, right? We're only getting our Facebook comments for some reason on the show. So if you want to get active in the comments, do us a big favor. Switch over to Facebook. I'm seeing y'all on LinkedIn right now, and I will give you shout outs as well. Gwendolyn May checking in. We got
Yeah.
Teresa Gibbs Hendricks, retired
Yes.
in Laurel.
That's my deacon.
There you go. The
We
church
got the
folks are in the
clergy.
house.
I
oh, yeah.
know.
I'm gonna have to keep it clean today too. The church folks are here in the house. Y'all pray for me already, okay? Pray for me, please. We got Jana in Brazil checking in, counting down the hours for this special show with special guest Sandra Clary, our good friend. I'm so excited to hear from Elena's mom, the history and grit that created the legacy lives on in Elena. Oh, that's nice.
That's wonderful.
And I want to echo that too, Edmonia. You've raised such an amazing individual here in Elena, a great professional and a great person. How did you do it? What's the
Uh,
secret?
the Lord was on my side.
Yeah, yeah.
That's it. I kept the faith.
Amen. I appreciate
She
that.
she also used a little Jedi mind trick sometimes.
Well, yeah.
She was the master at the Jedi mind trick. Yeah.
I love it. Let's see here. We got people. Let's see who else we got here. A bunch of people checking in here. Francine praying. You know, prayer is great for raising kids.
Oh, yes, sir.
You got to
Yes,
pray
sir.
through it sometimes. That's what my grandmother did for my dad because she prayed for him for about 30 years before it finally kicked in. So sometimes you guys got to keep praying. I'm so excited about the show. People are checking in. Yeah, leave your shout outs, leave your love there. Hit that heart button, hit that like button, smash that for us so lets everybody know we're here. Also, we're going to be talking about inclusion in the workplace. We're going to be sharing stories. I'd love to hear your story about inclusion in the workplace. I'd love to hear your thoughts around it. Should we start?
Yeah.
Should we
Yeah.
start with
Why not?
let's get into it. Elena, why don't you kind of tee this up for us a little bit here? And I want to ask you a little bit about to set the table about what is inclusion in the workplace. What does it look like? What does it feel like?
Oh, it's a great question that you asked. What does it feel like? It feels like each person should feel as if they're not putting on a mask when they are entering the workplace. They feel as if they're bringing their full selves to work. that they don't have to switch characters. And for so long, we've had individuals that just, and I'm not speaking just to people of color, but anyone who feels as if they have to put on a special face. And I don't mean just changing your attire, being professional or living up to a certain dress code, but feeling as if you can't talk about personal matters, feeling as if you can't express certain emotions when you are frustrated or tired, and also feeling as if you can't share your full skills. And when you can't do that, the workplace loses out. We lose out on that innovation. We lose out on just experiencing all sides of your humanity and that ability to connect as colleagues. And we spend, many of us spend the majority of our time at work. So imagine spending the majority of your life pretending to be a third of your personality or just someone else. So inclusion is much more than, it's one of the greater parts of the broader diversity, equity, and inclusion, because it is just that great denominator of in inviting individuals just to be their full selves. And how can we do that where everyone does it and not offend one another, where we just prioritize connection over productivity or just transactions?
It's so interesting when you talk about bringing your full self to work and feeling perfectly comfortable talking about your personal life and bringing all your skills to work. I mean, you're right when you say that this impacts, frankly, I think everyone in the workplace, but it certainly has historically and probably present day impacted certain people more than others. I think that's fair to say. But I know that I myself have felt this way at work, where I didn't feel comfortable, and I think it was really interesting. And I'm gonna ask Edmonia to share her story as well. But I think it's really interesting, when social media kind of came out, and I remember there was this very public debate around Facebook and whether or not people wanted to have their entire life exposed to basically the entire world. And Mark Zuckerberg's position at the time was that people shouldn't be two people. But that was, to me, the turning point, I think, in this whole conversation, where theretofore people were a professional person and then a personal person, and there was a separation there. And I think we're living in a world now that's increasingly seeking to remove the divide between our personal selves and our professional selves. And I wanted your thoughts, Elena, on that idea. I wanted your thoughts first on that idea, and then I want to explore Edmonia's story.
Yeah, well, we could pick one topic, and that is expressing emotions. There are different rules across the genders, and it's a certain space where I just recently spoke with one of my colleagues here, in that women, if we are angry or if we feel like crying over a situation that it's not safe to do so, we have to kind of reflect the male perspective and just hide it.
Mhm.
And the same thing with males or those who identify as male, just saying how they can't cry, or they have to, if they're expressing, it has to be in a way of anger. So what are ways to be really open when you're just stressed out, when you have received negative news or just had a bad day? Can you say that you are not okay? And it's those nuances where you can't feel comfortable not being okay one day. So it's not, sometimes individually we may not want to share because it's our choice. But when you really want to express that you're not okay, you're not fully engaged today, you should feel safe doing that. You should be encouraged and supported in doing that without fear of losing your job, without fear of being considered as unprofessional, inexperienced, sensitive. Is one of those triggering words. Oh, you're overly sensitive. You are emotional, unprofessional, angry all the time. Whatever that has been said, we've all heard variations of it. And it's
Wow.
those moments where, we begin to label colleagues that may be more expressive with their emotions. Some may be less expressive, but even those who are less expressive, we can't make a judgment call on their level of engagement or their level of compassion and care regarding a specific topic. So we just have to see people for who they are and not put everyone in an automatic box every time we meet them just because they have a certain position, gender, or a specific identity that we have put a label on them.
I really appreciate what you're saying, Elena. And I feel, honestly, I feel very convicted on this because I feel like I've been on both sides of this. I feel like I've been a person at work who felt like they couldn't express hurt or vulnerability or whatever. And I've also been a person who's called people overly sensitive, right? And so I've been on both sides of this, and it's very illuminating for you to explain this to me, and I'm sure other people out there. I'd love to know what you think out there. If you're watching this right now, we got people coming in here with comments. I'm very interested to see, does this ring true for you? Do you identify with either or both of these? Because I think oftentimes we're also a product of a system, and we can perpetuate a lot of times some of the things that are less than ideal, right? I mean, sometimes we're part of the problem, and we're victims of the system as well, too, that we live in. John is excited to be here right now. Donna, hello from Florida. Hey, Elena, nice to see you.
Good to see you too.
Look at this. Isn't this great? Love this, Elena. Such a fabulous lady, and great to see a fabulous mom with us, too. Yes, and we're going to hear Edmonia's stories as well. I can't wait to hear about that. Beverly Bell. Hi, Elena. Ben switched over from LinkedIn. So pleased to have your input on this topic and to meet Miss Anderson as well. Hello to Elena's mother.
Hi.
You get a lot of love, Edmonia. I can't wait to hear your story here. William Wiggins, hello from the EPA in Cincinnati. Really looking forward to the conversation today. Don't know about genders, Elena. I am missing the emotions on Facebook, the floating likes, etc. Yes, we are not emotional enough. Hit that like button. Jarvis King, hello.
Oh,
We got family.
The family's in the house. This is great. Edward Steele, hello. I face this often. Appreciate you sharing that.
My pastor.
Oh, look at that. Welcome, Pastor Steele. Janet Turner, hello, my friends. Hey, Janet. Edmonia, I want to hear about your story. I mean, here we are talking about today, and I feel like we have a lot of work to do today. But gosh, it has to be different now than it used to be. What was it like when you joined the workforce?
Oh, when I joined the workforce, it was totally different.
What year was it, ma'am?
1965.
Wow.
Bell South. Well, Southern Bell South, now AT&T.
And ma'am, that, if I recall, that was the year after the Civil Rights Act of 1964, wasn't it?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
We were all met. We signed up. We called ourselves being interviewed. They had to check our weight, check our teeth, check our sight, everything before you were allowed even into the interview room.
I can't. I'm just processing this right now.
It's illegal now.
I would have been fired a long time ago. Someone's checking my weight. Oh my gosh, that is so incredible. Okay, I'm sorry. Continue.
That's okay. But in the interview process, there were I think 2 females present, and you kind of sort of felt you had somebody on your side, but no, they were part of the problem. They made sure your grades were up to par, that before you came in, you didn't have any errors in your past before they even interviewed you. So it was something. It was a big difference than it is today when we finally became telephone operators. That's long distance operators. Years ago, we were allowed to come in, and there was a long switchboard, and there were a green and a red tag up. The red was to relieve someone when they're going home or off that shift. The green was they were going on a break. So we'd get the reds first. And if they saw us of color coming to relieve them, they snatch it down. So we'd have to go to the end of the line and find a place to sit and wait for somebody to move out.
Because they didn't want you to sit in their seat? Is that what it was?
Correct.
Oh, wow.
Correct.
So would you say this is still Jim Crow South?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It
Wow.
still is.
Wow. Incredible. This is incredible. Put your thoughts and reactions in the comments here. I'm curious. I mean, we're hearing Edmonia's stories here. People are starting to put some of their interview experiences. If you have an interview experience that felt less than inclusive, put it in there. I'm sure it wasn't nearly to the degree of Edmonia's. So this was what the day-to-day experience was like. Are there any other? I mean, I'm sorry, I don't even mean to interrupt. Just keep going, because this is just
No,
fascinating.
that's fine.
Yeah, I had a question too. Just how did it feel to see other women present and those women not be allies? And they were part of the system, or I wonder what was going through their head if they saw you, if they had a connection with you as a fellow woman.
I don't think so.
Because it wasn't that many women in the workplace either.
No.
Well, and were these white women, Edmonia?
I was going to say they were not women of color.
Right.
So that was already a strike against you. But if you had a cavity or if you wore glasses, you were already out, besides the weight. So you didn't even get to go to that particular process. And once you got in there, she was part of the corporate environment. So what was good for the company is what they were looking for.
Well, and frankly, I mean, to this day, and I don't know if you would call them human HR or human resources, but I mean, I think a lot of
you did that.
Well, I mean, this is too early. You can't get me on HR, okay? I'm sure I'm going to say some way more off base things. No, but I mean, I think that a lot of times employees have a misunderstanding of the function of HR within a company, and maybe some people are going to take issue with my understanding. But I remember as an employee, I thought that the HR department was there to make sure that I got a fair shake, and that I was treated fairly and equitably. And then when I became part of management, I realized that they were actually there to protect the company.
Yes.
And so people are encouraged to go to their HR department when they have a complaint or an issue or a grievance or for arbitration of some sort. But in actuality, they work from the HR department works on behalf of the company, and they don't, my opinion, feel free to disagree with me, but they don't always have the employee's interest at heart first and foremost. That's me. Feel free to disagree.
I agree. Because I too had to go from a unionized position into management. And once I got on the other side, I realized what all of the other mess was. They were for the company and they were looking for the bottom line. That's all.
We've got some comments coming in here. Keep these comments and questions coming in. This is incredible. I'm just, the things that you've lived through and the stories you have to tell. I'm so excited about this. Elena's on point. Many are able to bring and show their whole self to the workplace for the exact fears expressed. People are just agreeing and supporting. And
Chamaria, hello.
Look at that. The friends are coming out. Francine, I felt that it has been difficult to share some things in the workplace. I don't want to be put in a box. Interesting. I have to admit, I've also put others in a box. And I think this is the thing too, right? I think we all have to, come to grips with the fact as we get more information about how others feel and are impacted by our actions, that we're able to reconsider and admit when we've been part of the problem. And I think that that's the way that we reconcile as a society. Right now, we seem to be very divided on things. Yeah. And there doesn't seem to be middle ground and gray area and places where people can come and be imperfect and reconcile and be for and seek forgiveness and find forgiveness and reconciliation. And Francine, I appreciate you taking a step out to say, I also have done that. And I hope that others see that it's actually okay to admit these things. Richard says, what dreadful interview experience, truly dreadful. William Wiggins, two of my aunts retired from Bell South in Nashville, Tennessee. Joyce Baker Cottrell and Shirley Baker Prince.
Okay.
Yeah. People are just appreciating the story here, finding it jaw-dropping. Richard, how do they even feel they had the right? How did they feel, Edmonia? Where did you think that sense of entitlement or ability to even poke and prod people came from in the
I don't
organization?
know. It had to come from the upper crust to them, because they were interviewing the everyday Joe, everyday person coming in for a job as a telephone operator, and they were given the privilege to weed out those that they thought were undesirable in that process. So I think they felt they had the right, they had the position, and they could do like they wanted to do, and they did.
Were white folks screened in the same manner for
That I
cavities
could
and things?
I'm pretty sure they were, but I can't verify that because the group that I was with was of color. We were
Mm-hmm.
Black people or Black
Mm-hmm.
ladies.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of, we talk about intersectionality, and Elena, your question to your mother about what was it like to see women and them not be allies, right? Because on the one hand, they're women together, but on the other hand,
Right.
one's white and one's Black, and therefore treated differently. And when I talk to my family from the South, there's also the intersection of there's the poor and working class folks, and then there's land owning folks.
Right.
And poor and working class folks is another disadvantaged segment. So when you have poor Black woman, and I'm not saying you were poor, I don't know what your situation was, but there's like three intersection now. Okay. All right. I didn't mean to put that on you. I know I'm already in HR calling people poor. I don't know, whatever. I just know when I talked to my grandmother, I mean, there was, frankly, a lot of people felt like they didn't have much back in the day. So there's like these classes of folks, and I could see the poor working class white folks treated in a similar manner, but of course they still had many more entitlements than someone of color had. Very, very interesting.
Yeah, Ben, it's a good question because the reason why it stuck out to me regarding my mom's story was that the women were the oppressors, but I know the women got to that place. It was a struggle for them too. Right. They were probably, held to a second standard too. And it's an interesting dynamic when those who have been marginalized and oppress others. So there's power in acknowledging that you haven't been perfect. So I appreciate your comment and Francine's comment about struggling with that. And I too, because whenever you go through a tough process, whether it's something like, let's say, a course that was difficult, are you more inclined to pass on notes or tips to the people behind you? Probably not. You're like, look, I struggle, so you got to figure it out too to get to this place. And so that's a human construct, an issue where if I fought to get here, I'm not gonna, I'm still trying to climb. I'm not gonna reach back and try to lift you up either. And that's one of the points where we have to get in order to reconcile and heal, because, despite our journey and our struggle, we have to make it easier for others and identify with that struggle and create a better path for others behind us, and not fall back into our human inclination to just say, yeah, I made it, and you can figure out how to make it yourself too.
Mm-hmm.
As you're saying that, I'm thinking of the construct or concept in the workforce of paying dues, right? And so if you were brought into a company and they treated you really crappy in the beginning, and they gave you maybe it was a boiler room situation, or you had to do all this crazy work and prove yourself and whatever, and then you get to management or leadership or whatever, and you're just like, well, you got to pay your dues, and this is the culture, and this is how this is part of training, this is a normal thing, but maybe it's a very toxic situation. And yet we continue to perpetuate it on the new people in the organization. I think this manifests itself in so many different ways. When we talk about inclusion in the workplace, so many people think that this isn't about them, or this isn't a conversation for them, that, and I'll talk about white men as a white man, right? Inclusion. Well, we exclude ourselves from conversations about inclusion way too often. And I think we neglect our own ability to affect change. And so I welcome all the other folks that look like me to this conversation, and realize that there's so many more ways besides race, gender, socioeconomic status that we create non-inclusive environments and even toxic environments. we have other comments coming in here as well. Keep these comments coming. I'd love to hear your questions for Edmonia and for Elena around inclusion. Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting thing, right? So we're people of faith, but then we also look at our brothers and sisters and we say, you know, how are they perpetuating these things? That's a whole nother show.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
yeah, I would say. But I would also challenge as far as states that are most racist. I mean, personally, my experience, and it could be a generational thing, I experienced more racism outside of my home state. And I don't want to call other states out, but
Well, let's call other states out for being racist. Let's do a top 5 non-Southern racist states. No, you know, I'll call them out. So I was born in Texas, but I think the most racist state I lived in was probably Michigan. Extremely segregated. And it was a different type of racism. I think it was Dave Chappelle or something. You know, people have done bits about this, right? But it's kind of a different type of racism. It's the less overt and the more institutionalized. It looks, you know, more like redlining and like not giving people access to economic opportunity and less like, you know, writing epithets on the bathroom wall and throwing a brick through your window, right? It's just different kind of racism, but equally or maybe even more harmful, right? So I agree with you, Elena. I think that's a really good point. I think people in the North also need to realize like this conversation is about everyone, right? And what we can do.
Yeah. So I would say my most racist state experience was Indiana, and my most racist city was Boston.
Oh, Boston's
Yeah. And so I know the Boston Globe is doing a special report about it, but that was my first negative encounter with the police.
Wow. Yeah, there's a reason Malcolm X came out of Boston, right? I mean, he was fired up coming out of Boston.
Oh yeah.
People are asking, were those rules for weight and teeth, etc., only for Black women?
So far as I know of, they were, because that's what my group was when we went in for an interview. You were seated in a room, and all of them were Black women that were there with me. But you know, that was the first stepping stone. If I had given up or stayed and operated all my life of the telephone company in my 30 years, then that's where I would have been. But I saw other things out there I wanted to be. So I put my foot forward to see if I could be those other things. And I did. I got in the union. I got to be a job steward. I talked so much and I carried on so much with supervisors. They decided to put me in the management program to shut me up. So it was interesting.
Wow. They gave you a promotion to shut you up, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
I won a lot of cases. As a job steward.
Nice. You know, as I think about this too, when we look at, you know, we think about this story and we're like, wow, that's so different from it is today. But we still see, you know, things like in, you know, looking at people's pre-existing conditions when hiring them, right? When we look at like weight and teeth, I mean, that really is a signifier, in my opinion, for what's the probability, you know, you're going to miss work, or what's the probability you're going to be less than, you know, productive or whatever for some reason, or cost the company for medical bills or whatever. I mean, that's probably, I'm guessing that's the rationale that they were using at the time. But in a lot of times this manifests itself today in hiring practices now when people have medical, you know, conditions, or maybe, you know, hiring people who have children or not having kids. I mean, just there's all sorts of protections that have come up to protect people around this. Elena, what are some of the other areas where we need to probably look at how we can be more inclusive as companies?
Yeah, definitely that candidate status is so critical, just the conversation. So being on the other side of, being on both sides, definitely as part of the HR team or the hiring team, the conversations that go on are really inappropriate. And it goes, you know, touching base on the Brian Flores issue, where you can have laws and rules in place.
Right.
And the mindset hasn't shifted. So I've been in conversations where there were judgments placed on the candidate thinking, well, she mentioned that she just married and she's young. Chances are she's going to have a baby soon. So we don't know how long she's really going to stay, or the assumption that when it comes to compensation, whether or not, she's single or not, well, she has a husband, so we don't have to pay her as much. Can we do her at the bottom of the scale? Judgments made on if someone is tall or attractive. We have a bias towards thinking that they're automatically going to be good or great performers, or that they know what they're going to talk about. If someone is overweight, that they're going to be lazy and calling out, or if they have a limp, that, oh no, they're going to have some claims, or that, they're not going to be as great of a performer. Now, these are admin jobs or jobs that would not require a physical need. So yes, there are legitimate jobs where you are required to lift 50 pounds, 75 pounds.
Right.
So it's one thing when mobility is required of the job, but if you're a receptionist or sitting at a desk for most of the day analyzing spreadsheets, it shouldn't matter if you're 6'1" in top shape. It should matter what you're doing. And so I've assessed, even in the consultative way, just inappropriate questions that address your socioeconomic status. And one of the problematic questions that have great intentions are, did you play sports as a young person? And so there's a very large firm that uses that question. They're trying to see whether or not you're a team player. They're trying to see if you led a team or have natural leadership skills. But if you came from a socioeconomic class where you just did not have a little league in your neighborhood, then I'm not an analyst. I'm not qualified to have this job or this role. And we really have to vet our questions that we ask, even when we're trying to be clever and trying to discern, who can do the job. And one of the worst excuses to make for not choosing someone is to say that they're not a cultural fit. That's one of the deepest pitfalls. Like, you will want someone that kind of doesn't seem like a typical cultural fit, because that would drive some change, that would bring on a different perspective. So we shouldn't just look at someone based on what is on paper, but look at those unwritten factors that, they seem unique, and we need something unique around us so that we can be challenged in our thought process.
You've given me, I've wanted to say like 5 different things as you were talking, because you've given me so many thoughts here. They like you've touched on so many things. The whole cultural fit thing, we do this all the time, right? We're always trying to create culture, and we're guilty of it, right? We try to be a very, in my company, Global, right? We try to be super inclusive in the way that we hire and the way that we source talent. In fact, now we're a recruiting company, right? So we do this for other people, right? Which is why it's super important that we're at the forefront of this kind of stuff. And, we think about cultural fits all the time. And maybe a better way to talk about it is a values fit, because there's things that are our core values as a company, and we're trying to solve for that, but we're not trying to exclude different experiences, different backgrounds, different skill sets, different strengths, things like that. We want that because we believe in the strength of diversity, but there's certain values things, frankly, that we don't want to compromise on. Maybe let me turn that around and just ask that as a question, as someone who kind of consults in this area and helps companies be better. How do we toe that line as an organization, or are we looking at it totally wrong?
It's what you said about values. Channeling values or asking about values is one thing. Asking about your background is another thing. So with values, you can ask questions about, what are your motivations? What are your aspirations? Or do you have ideas about a problem? So using those scenario-based questions where here's a challenge, fabricate a challenge and ask the candidate to solve the challenge, or what their approach would be, is more equitable than saying, what sport did you play? Oh no, you were a tennis player? Oh, you just, you don't play well on the team because you only played tennis and you didn't play football or basketball. So it's, certain assumptions we make based on someone's ability to provide that perfect response or you already know that you have a bias towards certain responses, when you present a scenario or a problem, then it's open-ended. You may even get an idea that you didn't think of. And also just not setting up, any assumptions with how that scenario will get solved. So keeping it as broad as possible, and you will have a wide range of responses.
Well, we're trying to really craft best practice, diversity, equity, and inclusion hiring practices for us, but also that we can share with our industry partners, and really being at the forefront of this. So I might like to collaborate with you on that, because there's things even now that I thought maybe I was doing right that maybe I'm not doing right. So I would love to discuss that with you, Elena, offline.
No problem. And it's always a good practice to, at some point, work with outside consultants with recruiting, because consultants that are not bogged down in your company culture. They may understand your industry. They may understand, obviously, because this is, a really tough time to do any type of recruitment. But when organizations try to do their own recruitment, they're still bogged down in their culture. And even when they identify that maybe we have some diversity, vulnerability, maybe we need to shift our culture, it's hard to do if you don't have an external voice that is looking honestly and pragmatically into your organization, and really just focusing on the skills of whatever the business need is. And when you do that, you tend to come with at least a pool of candidates that you would not have thought about, even certain disciplines. You don't have to, not every education background fits in a certain mold. You want to maybe look at certain types of thinkers and be more open about how someone can still get the job done effectively. And so, I've been in roles where I've seen, for an economics research job, I've seen engineers get hired, because it's not about doing the math, but having a practicability, being practical about the approach. So sometimes when you identify your needs, having someone else look at it opens up the opportunities where, you're in it, you're too close to the tree to see the full forest when it comes to recruitments.
Totally. And frankly, we have implicit biases, right? And we have to get outside of our own head sometimes. Teresa says, I was working for a defense agency when 2 women of color were interviewed on the same day. After interview, someone asked the commander which one. He stated the light one. The year was 1972 in DC.
Wow.
Yep.
I wonder if that was, I guess she's inferring that was the basis of the decision, or was that just how to
Yeah, well, you don't know, but
like say the short one or the tall one, or the one with the green shirt. I don't know, but it's a you don't know.
Well, I'm sure if there was data out there, it would expose that, certain complexions had a greater chance of getting hired versus others. And even if it's not explicitly stated, that data may remain the same. So there, in addition to racism or racial bias, there's like colorism or just other physical bias that are related to getting the job done.
Yeah, totally. We see that the CEOs of companies tend to be tall men, right? There's a bias toward Larry says it was just the racist South way of dealing with people of color.
I agree.
Yeah. Edward Steele, I see this right now in the Postal Service. Edward, what do you see? I'm curious about that. Beverly, enjoying the conversation here. Jamie tuning in, support and appreciate you, Jamie. Richard, I have nothing but total respect for Mrs. Anderson to have such bad experiences, bring up such amazing, confident daughter as Elena. I want to ask you, actually, I got a question here, but I'm going to pause that because Sandra's got a question. Hi, Mrs. Anderson. Thank you for sharing today. We love your daughter, and now what we see makes so much sense. I'm interested. When you were dealing with all of this in the workplace and elsewhere, what was your approach in modeling for your children? How much did you share at the time?
I shared all of my experiences at the time. That's why I pushed for education, because I said, what you get in your head, no one can take it from you. There are other things out there and other means, but get all the education you can, whatever the company offers that you're working for, sign up for it, get it. As I said, we were poor. Now, we didn't know we were poor because we never went without. No lights were ever turned off. No food was always available. Everything was there. That's why I pushed her in private things. Not only put her in private things, but I also made sure she was exposed to everything, because I used to be a clown. I used to be in the Telephone Pioneers as the president. I was a clown. I was Pinko. So I made her costume, and she was Pinko too. I drug her everywhere.
Do we have photos of this, Mrs. Anderson?
Listen, we went everywhere. I took her everywhere that I had to speak or had an opportunity to show off some of the pioneering things for the Telephone Pioneers. I took her. I drug her everywhere. She got tired, but I drug her anyway.
What's funny is that my mom has gone with me to ERC conferences and other immigration conferences, so I get to pay her back, even though everyone just loves hanging out with her. But like, to answer Sandra's question, man, there was everything she learned, whether it was an internal workshop or if she had to travel somewhere, she let me read her workbooks and talk to me about what she learned. Now, she was from the accounting tax space. I didn't like it. I didn't think it was fun. But I definitely learned a lot about, if kids my age, like 7 and 8 didn't know about, balance sheets and ledgers, general ledgers, or I think you called it a 10 key, but the adding machine thing, you tried to get me to like add up numbers without looking at the keypad. So everything that she learned, she brought it home for me to learn as well. And she talked to me about the cities that she visited. If I couldn't go with her, she, would bring back stuff and tell me the story about what she experienced and some of the sites that she saw. But the act of being active in your organization, she passed on to me very early, especially volunteering in a professional association, as no matter even if it was being a clown. But she also exposed me to just being a leader within the organization, outside of the organization. So some of the best advice and role modeling she has provided me is to never stop learning. And there's an opportunity to learn in every space of your job. So it could be the day-to-day, it could be that extracurricular activity. And, I remember the road trips and even with being a clown, she had to go to school to be a clown. She had to get educated to do. There's a clown school out there.
There's clown college, yes.
Yes, and they teach you how to appropriately engage with individuals, because there are individuals with phobias, and how to engage with phobias, how to work with children. And one of my most memorable experiences was working. I think we took a trip to the Alabama Institute for the Deaf and Blind, and we were learning how to engage with individuals through sign language, learning how to sign my name, and being able to, I think we did a performance for the children, and just being able to do that. So it was community service, as in addition to getting trained by your organization on a skill. Don't know when clowning will come in use again.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
There it is.
Oh no.
Praise the Lord. There we go.
Oh no.
Yes, it's fantastic.
My cousins who are watching, so she clowned not just as a professional, but she brought the gifts home.
Wonderful.
Lord.
Thank you so much. Whoever did that, bless you. Wow, no, that's great, and you know, I love it. I love it because it all makes so much sense. I mean, as you kind of tie it together, Elena, you know, and how you're globally curious, you know, and all the cities that you go to, and tell you about those things, and the volunteering and getting involved, and I just think that's such a great word for people to understand how much our kids are looking at us and how we move and what we do and our choices that we make. And I think about my own children and what kind of a legacy, you know, and am I imbuing them with, right? And so I appreciate that advice almost, really, I would call it. Richard's got a question here. He says, Richard's trying to put me out of business. Richard says, I wonder whether recruitment is something better suited to software than human beings. Thanks, Richard. Serious question. Thank you. Yes, very serious, existential even. And I would take that to governments and start with the UK.
Can I jump in on that
Please.
one? Richard, I would say there is such a thing called machine bias. And with machine bias, every software is designed and coded by a human being. And it was actually a topic brought up by a former colleague at the Brookings Institution talking about machine bias in real estate valuation. So it's something that actually touches our field. Why do homes in certain zip codes are valued at a certain rate compared to others, and that valuation equals into the wealth for that family? And oftentimes the valuation is linked to infrastructure, but if you're just, you know, a few miles away in another zip code, it seems as if, you know, certain racial groups, or if there's a certain proportion of races within a zip code, then the homes are valued lower. And that translates into other AI or other types of systems that we use to allegedly be blind in processes. So going into the selection and recruitment process, yes, software can be biased too. So we have to peel back every layer and look at it in a way, really have other eyes look at it and call it out when we see it and make those adjustments, because there are human beings behind everything. One example, oh, it seems like you want to say something, but real quick.
I just love the takeaway here, Richard, is that machines are racist. Keep enlightened human beings in the process. And I hope my team's writing these counterpoints down when we inevitably run up against the AI in 5 years. This is great, Elena.
It's a garbage in, garbage out. But right now, what I've experienced in certain vetting software on the HR side of things is that it's very binary focused. So if you're trying to be open and diverse and inclusive of non-binary individuals, there's a whole lot of HR software that isn't ready for that. Even though as human beings, we may change our text and language on web pages and the application forms, we have to be very critical of those applicant tracking systems and making sure that each question is open. And it was a blind spot that was exposed to me just a few years ago. I was trying to set up an application process where, you know, the applicant tracking system went through the filters, but in the end, it was, you know, just, are you male or female? It just did not offer any other options. And I still see that today in 2022, whether it's benefit applications, benefit enrollment forms, or just other application processes where it's not open to other gender identifications. And so what other, if there's a blind spot for gender, what are other blind spots that could be faced? So even just entering zip codes, again, there's bias around zip codes or just assumptions made if you can see someone's zip code. So you make the assumption, oh, you know, they're going to have a long commute, or they can't make it, they're not going to be timely, or they come from this socioeconomic class. So there's so many things that we have to be accountable for with the tech that we use, because the technology is an extension of our brand. So the organization, you know, it creates efficiencies, but it can also create additional exposure in this space.
Yeah, no, this is great. And speaking of inclusion, let's shout out to people on LinkedIn here because their comments aren't populating on StreamYard, so I can't put them up here, but I am reading them. Chris Benson, LOLO. Ben, you're so funny. I appreciate the insight, the attention to the bias that could be in software. Hadn't thought about that. And he's Director of International Benefits and Wellbeing at Walmart. Awesome, Chris. Nina Taylor. Nina from H-Town. Elena, you are amazing and love hearing you and your mother speak on this show. That's fantastic. Elizabeth Presner Soley, Edmonia is amazing. I love it when she travels with Elena.
Oh, that's my Vegas buddy.
There you go. Do you have some stories you'd like to share about Elizabeth?
No, we can't talk about that.
That went on in Vegas. It's going to stay there.
Okay. All right. I'm just seeing if you know your rules. That's all.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Vinny, hi, Elena. I'm late, but I'm now here. Vinny Valverde. So amazing to see our amazing Elena. Very good. Stephanie Aker, values are so important, sadly, often overlooked and underappreciated. Appreciate that. Michelle Samuel, wow, so true. Reaching next to you or even behind you to assist the next person and is not often practiced in the workplace. There is a lot of talk about including, but practicing it is another thing. Super interesting. And Stephanie says, my grandmother told me about how she had her measurements and other unconventional qualifications on her, I'm assuming, resume or application. Wow. Imagine that. Wow. Interesting. Very, very interesting comments. We've, okay, we got time for maybe one more question here. Richard's been super active here. Richard, I appreciate you. Edmonia, Elena, where we are now, please, in this whole situation, what needs changing most right now? He's guessing it's in the U.S. He's from London, by the way. He's from the U.K. Okay. He's guessing it's the U.S., but elsewhere also. Thoughts on maybe geographies, thoughts on areas of society. Where do we need to really focus the attention?
You want me to go first, Paul?
Yeah.
I should do a better job moderating. I apologize. No, Elena, would you like to start us off and then Edmonia?
I think with the U.S., we have to learn need to learn how to talk about this. So it's a very uncomfortable conversation. It is a conversation where others may feel that because of their privilege that they are now no longer entitled to stay. So what I mean by this is, and this is one of my clubhouse rooms, the new table club, in that we have to change our mindset about inclusion, in that we're not taking a space away from someone. We're adding a chair. And if the room isn't big enough, we're going to have to rebuild the whole room, rebuild a whole new table. We have to change our mindset around inclusion to where if there are only so many slots, we really need to think about the size and the shape of the organization and really rethink leadership and who really needs to be at the table to talk about the issues and to fully reflect what the role represents. And when it comes to our boards, our councils, really be honest, is this the right size to be inclusive? And if there's a minimum number of spaces, then we don't have enough conversation about our structures and what we're doing. So we have this mindset of scarcity and not a mindset of abundance where we just, let's rebuild something brand new. And I encourage those who are curious about this to direct message me or to talk about it, where every space, our faith-based organizations, our civic groups, as well as our workplaces, there is room to rebuild and reimagine where we are, because we all have the challenge, whether you directly receive oppressive actions or microaggressions, and you're the offended, or you are the offender. We're all victims of this type of institution, and we really need to rebuild some things. So maybe the same system no longer works. Every now and then, you're just going to have to upgrade your phone. You're going to need a new phone. You can't update the software, but so many times.
But what if I lose my contacts? What if I lose my pictures?
open. You ought to know how to integrate, so, knowledge management and, there's a way to stay connected to the past and to keep that knowledge and information, but your hardware will need to be upgraded at some point. So at some point, we're going to have to rebuild this whole country. In the UK, I haven't lived in Europe in an extensive amount of time, especially not the UK, but it's the same challenges, it's the same question. It manifests differently in the UK, where it's more about class. And I've seen that, judgments placed on accents to an American. It all sounds very similar to me, but just classism, human beings, we just have a way since the beginning of time to just put each other in spaces and boxes. So we are working against our own DNA, our own chromosomes here, but we can do it because we're humans and we can adapt and grow in so many different ways.
I think communication is the key, piggybacking on what Elena said. If we communicate and be that empty wagon that makes the noise, one person can make a difference. So just don't stand by and say, oh, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to do anything because they're going to take care of that down the road. You be that person who steps up. Sometimes, well, a lot of times you won't be popular, but that's okay. At least you stepped up and brought the question or the issue to the forefront. So I say communication is the key.
I love it. Beautiful. Yeah, this is really interesting. We're running a little short on time, and I wanted to have a little bit of fun at the end. Edmonia says, hey, listen, you're a clown. You can handle whatever I throw at you, okay?
Right.
All right, I'm not going to don't worry. It's not going to be anything that you didn't see on your final exam in Clown College, okay? All right. So we've been playing a little game here, overrated, underrated, okay? So it's a simple game. We're going to throw a couple topics at you, and I want to know if they're overrated or underrated. And you know what, Edmonia, we're going to ask you to play too, okay? So you're both going to play, all right, Miss Anderson? All right, so we're going to throw these at you, and then I'm going to actually ask you both to weigh in on this, and we'll probably alternate who goes first just to be inclusive. Stacy, minority recruitment bonuses. Elena, overrated or underrated?
I think it's overrated. I feel that it's very overrated. So recruitment bonuses are good, but when you specify certain groups get recruitment bonuses, it's like putting a bounty on a minority. Like let's go find women. Let's go find some Blacks and some Latinx. Let's bring them in and reel them in. And so it becomes. It's like, I'm thinking like the cowboy with the
that's what it is like though, right? And that's what it is like. I mean, you're trying to hit a quota. You're like, we don't got enough of this. Let's go get some, And now, what do you think, Mrs. Anderson?
Well, I think it's overrated.
Oh, sounds like y'all never got a minority recruitment bonus before. I don't think you'd be giving it back.
No, I didn't.
I think it's different when somebody puts money in your hand. No, but actually, how do they work? Is it given to the candidate, or is it given to the person that goes out and gets, like the recruiter or somebody that goes out and gets the candidate?
It's usually like an in-house referral. So if I, refer my friend, and my friend in the application opts into that affirmative action questionnaire and checks the box, then, $500. I've seen larger sums offered.
Okay.
And I guess as a thank you, it's kind of, yeah.
Oh, okay. Let me ask this in a different way here. For a friend. What about earmarking certain hires as diversity hires? Like we have this job open and we'd like it to be a diversity hire.
That is really overrated. It never feels good. It never feels good as the person is hired because it feels like, okay, I'm your token. And I'll say, I'm like, okay, I'm just your token Negro today.
There you go.
You didn't ask me about my qualifications. And it really sets that person up for failure and lack of true integration, because they will always be that slot that was filled. They'll never be that exceptional subject matter expert, which they usually are, but they'll always be seen as the diversity hire. And it is such a disadvantage to everyone around them, because it's like branding them for the entire career at the organization.
So how do you achieve a diverse workforce without intentionality about going after candidates who are diverse? Because if we don't use intentionality, then we're just going to be left to our own unconscious biases.
Yeah, and I'll throw this out. You can have a colorful photograph of diverse individuals, diverse looking individuals, but not have true diversity, because you know what? Everyone thinks the same, even though they may look differently. So again, to have true intentionality, you're going to have to define what diversity means. Your blind sides may be more than just what can be seen physically. And this is something I remind my clients, because they're like, we don't have enough women and minorities here. I'm like, well, you're missing other stuff too. Have you thought about what else you're missing? Have you thought about neurodiversity, or individuals that may think differently, may be on the autism spectrum, that would have special gifts that could be contributed to the workplace, especially towards certain positions? Have you thought about just diversity of thought, individuals that have been trained differently, or those who have military careers that are being integrated? There are individuals who have had career changes, and so the fact that they can change careers, show agility in their thought process and the way that they can pivot and support an organization through change.
And I'm sorry, we're gonna go over time here, but I got to get to the bottom of this. So I thought asking about prior service was not an okay thing. Is that a prior military service? Is that okay or not okay? I was told that once upon a time, a long time ago, in like 2008 or something, when I was hiring call center people.
It depends on how it's asked. If you present it in a way where you offer it as just a level of training, because there is bias for and against it. But I think there are advantages for having that type of training, especially when you are in certain career fields. There are certain disciplines, and just acknowledging it. I think our society now is embracing military careers much more, even civilian workers and careers. And I've even seen applications that ask, are you a spouse of a military individual? It's not position where it's a filter, but it's position where they get to see more about your lived experience.
Okay.
And that brings just a more well-rounded picture, because your service is your service. And to ignore that level of training, especially because it's not just, infantry training, you are trained on a technical role. You're in the military. And to ignore that is to pretty much ignore a significant portion of individuals' careers.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense to me. I have so many more questions, and we're going to talk about them offline. But I got a couple more of these overrated, underrated here. Employee resource groups. Overrated or underrated? And this time we're going to let Mrs. Anderson go first.
I think it's underrated. You need more. I think you need more to help with your workforce. I think they're not being utilized enough.
Nice. I like it. What do you think, Elena?
It could go either way. They're more underrated. And the reason I say they're underrated is that many of your leaders in these employee resource groups are not compensated for the additional time and the invisible work they contribute. They really do. It's a lot of work to be the leader of a segment of the workplace. You're listening to your colleagues. It takes out more time of your day. And it's a love of coordination. I think it's assign your leaders of the employee resource groups, and sometimes they have a full leadership structure. Those are great leaders to look at as part of your succession planning process. But this is volunteer time. It adds additional invisible work that goes unrecognized. It's overrated in how it's talked about as like an end all be all for an inclusive workplace. I think you don't just stop at these employee resource groups. You have to do more than just have a group. You need to figure out how they're better incorporated into the broader culture, where they are a pipeline of information, that it's kind of a two-way. But I'm pro getting some compensation or getting additional recognition for the leaders of those groups.
All right, we're gonna have to speed up just a little bit because I want to get to all of these because they're really good. But then William's got this great comment here. I specifically and purposely hire veterans, being a veteran myself. Veterans have real life and work experience, have travel experience, domestically and international, have leadership experience and values as a young military person.
Mm-hmm.
Is this acknowledged experience or bias? I love you, William, by the way.
It could be, all bias isn't negative.
Oh.
Because he lived it, he knows exactly the leadership qualities and the skill set that a veteran may bring. But as someone who's been a lifelong civilian, I may not know it. And that's why we need diversity in the hiring decisions. We have to have different types of thinkers with different types of life experiences that could speak to that value. Because my bias is different.
Yeah, this is one of these topics where the more I know, the more I feel like I don't know anymore, and the more I need to study. And I do think that there becomes a little bit of a fatigue factor too, though, because it's like, when you started, like, have you considered neurodiversity? Have you considered this? Have you considered that? It's like, wow, there's truly an infinite list here of diversities when you consider all the permutations and combinations of humanity, right? It can be, okay, I'm going to ask, does it at some point become analysis paralysis? How do you know when you've done enough, or can you ever do enough? And if you can't ever do enough, how do you know when it's okay to make a decision?
That's a great question. You know when it's okay to make a decision when at least the skill set has been presented. So if you have the mindset that every organization is an organic thing, we think of our organizations as just entities that are fiscal generators. We don't think of them as just a composition of a group of human beings that evolve and change each and every day. So that means an organization is different every single day, even if there are no workforce changes. So what you see at the interview will not be what you see 30 days after hire, will not be the same 5 years. So that's why inclusion matters, because as I evolve, I still belong. And so you're fine not answering all the questions, because you will step up to the challenge of that. And you don't want to be too rigid in your doing that, because you want the person to evolve as the organization's business needs evolve.
Okay. All right. We're going to go on to, let's see here. Stacey, I'm going to grab this real quick here. What about this one? Overrated, underrated, minority spotlights on social media. Elena?
Yeah, I had to, I had to call out a few folks. I don't want to do any names, but this happened around MLK Day. It's happening now. But okay, so if your leadership, and this happened on LinkedIn in 2020, where there were organizations that, had, here's our, Latinx employee, and here's this person, and someone called out companies or brands that had executive teams that had no minorities, no ethnic minorities, or very few women. And it's starting to be an issue now where, they'll have individuals on their social media page, on their website. Worldwide EIC was kind of called out by the diversity speaker when there were exhibitors who had panels behind them full of diverse people, but there weren't diversity standing at the booth.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, we have to
Was
really
that
think
Dr.
about.
Brown, by the way?
Yes,
She's
Dr.
gonna
Dina
be on
Brown.
it. Dr. Dina Brown is going to be on in the show in March, so we will definitely bring this back up,
Oh, yes.
just because I want all the smoke. So yes, this is great. Okay. So yeah, so people are getting called out because they don't have the diversity on their staff. Then they're getting called out for using the tokenism. It's hard to know what the balance is of spotlighting folks, or do you even spotlight folks? I mean, is the whole idea of having, I'm going to ask the question, is the whole idea of spotlighting Black professionals in the mobility space in the month of February, is it tokenism? Is it inappropriate? Is it the wrong thing to be doing? Or is it creating spaces for people to tell their story and to celebrate the Black experience?
So it depends on who is doing the spotlighting. So you're doing it as a way to amplify people and voices in a way, that is helpful. It's not a form of tokenism, but a form of really celebrating. There could be individuals that disagree, but what I'm saying is that if I'm employed by Acme Corporation and Acme Corporation just put me on their corporate social media page, but they have not allowed me to apply for that management position, or I've been stuck in the same role. It means that they're trying to exert an image and not backing it up by actually spotlighting my career and my progression within the organization, but they want to put that outward focus.
Right. So they're like, if it's like, oh, Elena, who's been with us 15 years and is still at a level 2 in our organization, it's like, tell the whole story. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Or what about the only person in the C-suite is the chief diversity officer?
That's a problem.
That's a problem. Yeah. All right. We're gonna keep moving here because I know we're over time, but I don't care. It's my show. Whatever. It's free to be on the internet. NBC is not going to shut me down. It's free to be on the internet. Let's see here. Let's do another one here. Okay. You know what? Let's have some fun. And I'm for all the church folks out there, I'm really sorry. Overrated, underrated. Johnny Walker.
Oh Lord, no, you didn't. It's underrated. It's the best of the best.
Now I hate to call out and I hate to no tokenism here, but is it Johnny Walker Black? Is it Johnny Walker Blue? Is it Johnny Walker anything?
Well, she knows all of them.
Yeah.
She knows all the Johnnies.
Yeah. It's red for me. Johnny Walker red and milk. I also have done black, blue, the green. Blue is wonderful, but
and
very
gold.
expensive.
Very expensive. And gold.
Yeah.
I
and
love
the Game
all
of
of Johnny
Thrones.
Walker. Huh?
My favorite is the Game of Thrones one.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that one. Yeah, I know all the Johnny Walkers.
God bless. This is so great. And milk, you say?
Yeah, that was started years ago when I had a problem, stressed out with the phone company, and I liked it, and somebody said, "Try this." I tried it. I like it.
Yeah, I could see that phone company get you drinking. I tell you what, from what I heard about that phone company. Oh my goodness gracious. Okay. All right. We're gonna end on another light note here. Thick sliced bacon.
Oh yeah, I love it. I love it. Thin slice, you have to make too many, pull too many things off to make a decent thing. Yeah, I'm a thick slice person.
Okay, let's dive in here. Let's double click on this for a second. Are you a pan fryer? Are you a baker? Or are you a microwaver?
I'm a pan fryer.
Okay.
Cast iron pan. Yeah.
Cast iron pan. Nice. Okay, now do you save the grease in a coffee can over by the stove?
No.
Or does it go right down the trash?
No, it goes in the trash.
Okay. All right. Just
I have to do olive oil.
You used to.
Yeah, years ago. That was years ago before I learned better. When you learn better, you do better.
Amen.
Okay?
Amen. That should be the theme of this whole show. When you learn better, you do better. I love it. Gwendolyn saying thick.
Thick. That's my girl.
Yes.
No,
Yes.
but with my mom, it's not just thick. It has to be like,
No, it's steak size. It's that.
yeah,
steak
yeah.
size.
She
Where do you? So that's called a pork chop. Where do you get that from?
no,
Where
this
do
is
you?
special butcher requests.
Yeah.
Oh Lord.
So they can change the blade for you to make it thin or thick. You
See,
just have to go to a butcher shop and
so
find
many tips today.
That's like pork belly. That's like when you go into like the
Yeah.
Korean or Japanese
Yeah.
and they just do pork belly and it's like that's one. Now, have you ever tried out a sous vide? You ever sous vide it, and cook it, in an immersion cooker, and bring it right to the temperature. So then you kind of get that cooks it all the way through, and you get that fattiness starts to melt, but it doesn't quite melt, and then you could sear it on your cast iron, get it good and hot, sear it, boom, 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 and then it's got just a crispness on the outside, but then it's that melt in your mouth on the inside.
That sounds great. That's great.
Yes, ma'am.
What have you done, Ben?
I'm gonna have to go to Birmingham. We're gonna have to cook. We're gonna have to cook something up in Birmingham. This is great. Richard Majewski says whiskey and milk tastes great. I did it in the winter. Never heard of this before.
Good guy.
I've never heard of Sandra Clary. No, must be crispy. Well, you can make thick sliced crispy. I make thick sliced crispy in the oven. I'll make it in a rack in the oven, and you can control the temperature. And that way, you know what I get? The round pan. Only one slice actually fits, and the rest of them are just kind of not included. It's not a very inclusive environment for bacon. They're kind of like, I don't feel like I'm myself here, and I'm flipping out.
Half. Cut them in half.
Yes, ma'am. All right.
It's bad. That's its own show. She can.
Yes, ma'am. All right. This is great. This is fantastic. I've had a wonderful time. I've learned something. I've had a wonderful time. William saying thick bacon only. Team thick bacon in the house.
That sounds like a shirt. Let's make it Love and Reload. Thick bacon only.
Thick bacon only. Yes. TBO, thick bacon only. All right, this has been wonderful. I want to give each of you an opportunity to just leave us with a final thought. Elena, would you like to go first?
Just want to thank everyone for popping in and your engagement. It's so great to see so many friends in the industry, family, and loved ones join us. Remember, never stop making space for others, regardless of the space you're in.
Mm-hmm. Just want to thank you, Ben, for inviting me and for being a part. I've watched you from afar on several shows, and I've thoroughly enjoyed you, and I thank you for the privilege of appearing today.
Well, it's been a blessing and an honor to have you here, Mrs. Anderson, and Elena, my good friend. Thank you so much for being here. This is fantastic. This is just warmed my heart. So anyway, thank you all for being here. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks for being active in the comments. I know LinkedIn was working and it wasn't, and Facebook was popping. So thanks everybody for getting in wherever you could. Hit that like button, send some love out there to the Anderson ladies. And thank you so much. We wouldn't have a show without all of you out there. Take care. God bless everybody.